You're listening to The Roots, a podcast from Minnesota AMA District 23 ARMCA. I'm your host, Jackie Reese. Let's dive deeper into what makes our district so great. This podcast was prepared by an independent contractor and may not be the views of the Board of Directors of District 23 ARMCA or any of their sponsors or affiliates. Hey everybody, before we hear from Cody, I just want to say a quick thank you to Fly Racing and Spring Creek MX Park for their support of District 23 ARMCA and this podcast. Welcome everybody to episode 30 of The Roots from Minnesota AMA District 23 ARMCA. This week our guest is Cody Anderson. Cody, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. So you are the Quad MX rep here at the District 23 ARMCA board. And so I thought it'd be really interesting to talk to you and how you got into the sport. So take us into those beginning days. How did you get involved with ATV motocross?
So I think I was about 3 or 4 years old, and my dad, I started on a Suzuki LT50, and we grew up in the country on the farm. And so even through grade school, I never really played sports or anything like that, just because my mom and dad were working. They couldn't bring me into town to, drop me off at practice, pick me up from practice. Didn't even really have a bicycle, to be honest, because it's all gravel roads and fields. What are you going to do, with a bicycle? And so I got a four-wheeler and kind of went from a 50 to an 80. And, pretty soon then I was I think I was 11 years old, and I got a Blaster 200, which is, I guess, really the baseline race ATV for somebody of that age. And then I think when I was 12, I had my first race at a county fair. Just kind of found it by dumb luck in the ads. So back then, you've probably never seen it before, but Star Tribune would have a classified section, and section 440 was ATVs. And I saw an ad for a county fair race. And so I begged and pleaded with my parents to bring me out there and let me race, which I did. Met a few guys and found out that there was another county fair race, the next weekend in Hutchinson. So we went out there, met some more people. And then I heard about District 23, and I'm like, well, what is this? I didn't even know that racing four-wheelers was really a thing, and now you're telling me that there's a whole circuit in my backyard. I got to know more. And so I reached out, and I was 13 years old, and the first person that I talked to from District 23 was Mike Quinn, and I'll never forget that, because he was so helpful and welcoming that he just made it really easy, to get into it. And so then I went to my first race, and that was at Staples, being run by Oldenburg at the time. And I realized that oh my gosh, these tracks are so much better and honestly safer than some of these county fair tracks that are, they throw them up overnight and they're all right, hit it, these promoters are making a career out of this, and it's in their best interest to serve the riders, and they do a great job at it. And so that's kind of what got me into the districts at probably about 13 years old.
That's awesome. How was the D23 ATV MX scene at the time?
Well, it was a lot different than what it looks like right now. I don't know that different as far as numbers or anything like that. Just the technology of the type of vehicle that you're riding, everything was two-stroke, whether it be dirt bike or ATV, everything was two-stroke. The tracks, the doubles were much smaller, just because you didn't have the horsepower to get you over those things. And at that time, it was actually ATVs and dirt bikes on the same track, on the same day, on the same weekend, same place, same, right? In fact, I grew up, my best friend, he was just here literally 30 minutes ago. He raced dirt bikes, and he and I rode together almost every day, when we were kids. And then we did the whole the local series together all summer long for 4 summers, because we could throw everything in one trailer and we'd bring it to the district races. He'd, race his bike races. I'd race my ATV races, and that was it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, like, things just change over time, and it's crazy to, be involved with something for so long that you get to see those things change over time.
For sure. Yeah. And especially, the promoters, the families, some of them have been doing this forever. Most of them in our house are their household names, like you say the name like, well, Dale and Sharon. Well, obviously my wife knows exactly who I'm talking about. I don't need to say a last name. I don't need to associate a track with it. Mm-hmm. We've just been around them for so long.
Yeah, that's awesome. And something that we need, right? Those people that are so dedicated for decades at this point to the district and everything that's going on here.
For sure.
So at some point here, you progress through the ranks and you make it to the professional level in ATV racing. How did it go for you?
Well, there's definitely ups and downs. There is a lot of sacrifice and commitment to get there. Mm-hmm. At 21, I had my first professional ATV motocross race, and I made it into the main via winning the LCQ. So not real prestigious, but I made it, Yeah. And at least there was, enough that you had to qualify for it. You didn't just automatically make it in. Mm-hmm. And that was like probably 2000, I don't know, early 2000s, like 4 or 5, I don't know, 6 maybe. But it was definitely interesting, like had finally made it, and I got 11th in the main, and I got a check for it, and I honest to God wish I would have hung on to it, because in the memo box it says ATV motocross 11th place is for $100. Like if I could have kept that thing and framed it, I would have. But like, yeah. I needed the money. I needed $100. Sadly. But and so after that, I was kind of like I was on my way. I was 21 years old. Had just entered my first pro race, qualified. I'm like, okay, we're gonna do this. And then unfortunately during spring training before the national series kicked off, I had a pretty serious injury, breaking my back. And so then while it was healing, it was getting better, a long-term sponsor of mine, Rath Racing, they're really more into like the dirt track, like TT style racing. He's like, well, I mean, this is a lot less hard on your body. You could come and do this for a while. And I'm like, yeah, I'll try that, and so I went to a race with him and signed up for Pro-Am just because I didn't really know what I was getting into. And at the time, if you raced Pro or Pro-Am, either on the motocross side or on the TT side, you had to sign up for those same classes. So I went with the lighter class of Pro-Am and was like, okay, well, I mean, this went pretty well. I don't know what place I got. Maybe like 8th or something like that. And then between the first race and the second race, there's kind of a little bit of a contract dispute that I had with a sponsor. And they said, no, like we only give product to people who are racing the pro class. And I'm like, okay, so here we go. So the next race I signed up for Pro and Pro-Am, and I wasn't terrible at it. It almost came fairly naturally to me for like have never done like the dirt track or TT stuff. And coming from the motocross side, like I definitely had like a physical stamina advantage against those guys because they're not used to motocross and the intensity of it. And so I would make more of my passes probably later in the race. But anyways, I did that for a couple of years and it was fun. But my true heart and passion was definitely on the motocross side.
What brought you back to motocross? Just getting kind of bored with the TT stuff, or a specific person maybe?
I was finally healthy enough to go back and be competitive again. This time, unfortunately, that 2-year window that I spent racing TT, I think that was probably, my optimal time to be at the professional ranks. And I just never did sign back up for a pro class specifically. So I raced Pro-Am Open and Pro-Am Production. So I did that for a couple of years. 1 year as a complete privateer on a Honda. And excuse me, I was trying to get noticed by a factory because this was like in 2007. And at the time, like a lot of the factories were like really heavy into it, between like Yamaha, Honda, Kawasaki, Suzuki, Can-Am, like everybody had a team, you know? And so I was trying to get noticed and get a ride. And so in 2008, I signed a factory contract with Polaris because they had a merger with KTM. And so we were using KTM motors inside of a Polaris chassis. And so that next year, I raced Pro-Am Production and Pro-Am Open on a KTM powered Polaris.
How was that? That sounds interesting.
It was we had better days. You know, the motor really wasn't what it needed to be. Long stroke crank, and the chassis definitely needed help. In 2009, they completely redesigned the chassis, and that was much, much better. But, you know, right around that time is when we had the downturn of the economy, and that whole program just kind of was killed, you know. And then in 2010, I raced cross country for them on the national level aboard their Sportsman 850. And that was, you know, another experience. It was fun. It was something to do. It didn't cost me anything, you know? So it was great. But again, I was like, I got to go back to motocross, and decided not to renew any contracts, and went back to motocross as a privateer and bought my own Hondas and did my own thing. And it was really kind of nice because, you know, a factory contract sounds awesome until you realize like all the nuances and details that come along with it. Like, I don't get to choose this, I don't get to choose that. You know, like, no, you have to use these handlebars. And like, there's great things about it, and then there's not so great things about it.
Yeah, and especially when you know exactly what you like, exactly what you want, I can understand how that could be frustrating for you.
Yeah, a little bit, but you know, so went back to, you know, just doing my own thing and just having fun with it again. You know, like, I think there was maybe a little bit of a time there where, you know, everything at some point becomes a job, regardless of what it is, you know, and you got to remember how you got there and why you love it. Go back to the basics, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. So you've raced all these disciplines in the U.S., but not only have you raced in the U.S., you've raced across the world. So tell us about those experiences and how they went.
Yeah, so there's a couple different countries that I raced in. One of them was in France. There's a race over there called the Pont de Vue, which is a 12-hour long, 3-manned, 1 ATV motocross race. And about half of it is done in the middle of the night with like headlights. So you got to outfit your ATV with, you know, very adjustable or quick disconnect and connect headlight system, taillight system. It gets pretty intense. I mean, so it's 120 entries. Okay. So and it's a Le Mans style start. So it's chaos because there's 119 other ATVs out there racing on the same track as you, you know, and it could be at night, and it's motocross. Like, you're jumping this stuff. And obviously you've been around like G outs and holes, like where everybody's been landing all day long. You know, it's pitch black. Like, you don't have headlights on the skid plate. You don't see those holes. You got to know it. You got to feel it, and then pick your line the next lap around and say like, okay, I'm going to jump over the hole or to the left of the hole or whatever. It was very, very intense. I would say that maybe 60% of the people that start finish. Our first year, I did aboard a Polaris with the European factory team. I had a friend over in Sweden, Jesper Rosling, who asked me to be on the team with him. And I'm like, yeah, okay, and so that's where I met our third rider, Liam Cater, from the UK. And so the first year we finished 24th, and we thought, like, man, it's pretty good. Like, not only did we finish, but top 25,
Yeah.
So that went well. And so, like, I don't know, 6 months later, I get a phone call from Liam, and he's like, hey, I'm working with this guy over in Italy. He wants to put together a team. Are you interested? I'm like, yeah, I'll do it again. It's one of those events where you finally complete it, and it's beat the crap out of you for 12 hours. I mean, I'm not kidding you. I mean, like, everything's bleeding. Your knees are bleeding. Your elbows are bleeding. Your nipples are bleeding. Everything's bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I never want to do that again. And then 6 months later, you're like, was it so bad? It was kind of fun. Not do it again, and
Yeah.
it's just weird how time will ease all things.
Mm-hmm.
And so he calls me, he's like, hey, I'm working with this guy in Italy. He wants to put together a team. Are you interested? I'm like, yeah, let's talk about it. And so I got together with the team manager and, basically sent him a resume. We talked a bit. It helped that I had already raced with Liam. We knew each other. It's kind of like one of those things where it's like, this guy and I went through hell together, but we made it. I'll never forget,
Mm-hmm.
So that year we raced with our third man was Roberto Villalobos out of Mexico, and a very talented guy. Still talk to both Liam and Roberto and Jesper to this day. They're all great people. But that second year, we were on a Honda, and that thing was fast, a little too fast, in fact. With about 2 hours left, we blew a crank, and we were in second place and knocking on first place door. So that was a absolute heartbreaker. Like, Liam and I were just talking about that just a couple months ago, and he's like, those damn Italians made this thing way too fast, But it's very interesting to go over overseas and see what other people are creating and what they're doing. Like, here we think, like, boy, like, our stuff's working really good, from an aftermarket perspective. So, whether it be, FMF or this or that, whatever, right? I mean, like, going to another country and seeing, like, what their top performers are using, it's an eye opener. It's like, oh, okay, well, maybe we're not as advanced as what we thought we were, and we should get outside of the box and really do something different. It's like the four-wheelers that we were racing over there, they had carbon fiber swing arms, and it's like, holy crap, or titanium axles, which, I mean, now that's nothing special, but back then it was like, geez, guys, like, this is a $40,000 four-wheeler,
Yeah, that's crazy, right? And everyone has their own approach to going about things, and like you had mentioned, maybe they made it a little too fast and not so reliable, but man, that's a bummer that it let go on you guys just near the end there.
It was definitely a heartbreaker. Like, if it would have stayed together, I would put money on it, we would have won.
Yeah.
But that was a great opportunity, and so then I did that one for 2 years. And then for 2 seasons, like, basically during our winter here, I'd fly back and forth to the Dominican Republic. Daryl Rath from Rath Racing out of Hutchinson, again, a long-term sponsor. In fact, he was my best man in my wedding. And to be honest with you, without him and his family, most of these opportunities never would have come to fruition. So I'm indebted to him for forever, So he's like, yeah, I'm going to go race down here in the Dominican Republic. All right, cool. Let me know how it goes. Well, he comes back and he's like, yeah, I won. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of figured you would, And then he's like, well, the guy that's paying for all my stuff, he's like, well, one is good, two's better, right? He's like, do you want to come down? And I'm like, yeah, for sure. So we had shipped the four-wheelers from here down there, so it was our own race ATVs. It wasn't like it was, we're borrowing somebody else's so that we need to make changes or this or that or whatever. They were ours, and so basically we just kicked ass, and it was great. And so did that for a couple of years, which was really nice because like in the winter here in Minnesota, it's always frozen. It's cold. At that time, there was no Cedar Lake Arena. It's like anybody would do anything to get out and ride, and here I am down in, the Caribbean riding a four-wheeler around, do.
Yeah.
And it's just some of those things that I'll never forget. And those are the opportunities that I've had because of this. Like one night we were sitting in the hotel room, me and my other friend from Pennsylvania, Jason Dunkelberger. We're sitting in the Dominican, and I'm like, you know what, man? You know what's really crazy that I just still can't wrap my head around? And he's like, well, what's that? And I'm like, here we are at, 22, 23 years old, whatever it was. And we're sitting in a 5-star hotel not far from the beach in the Dominican Republic with all of our stuff paid for just because we can ride a four-wheeler really fast. Like that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But those were honestly some of the greatest times of my life.
Yeah.
And it's all thanks to District 23. Mm-hmm. I cut my teeth on ATV motocross with these promoters and these families and everybody on the board that created an environment for us to do that. Like you wouldn't believe how many kids I meet who I talk to their parents. They're like, he doesn't like sports. Like he doesn't fit into those boxes, or maybe it's their little girl or whatever. And it's like, yeah, I get you. That's me, So it's important to me that ATV racing in Minnesota not only survive, but thrive, because I want to have, my kids, somebody else's kids, maybe someday you have kids and for whatever reason, they're like, I like quads or, whatever. That outlet for them needs to be there, because without it, they will never get to really understand what they're capable of achieving and where this sport can take them. I understand that it's there on the two-wheeled side, but again, like me, I did the dirt bike thing for quite some time and just didn't gel, and so went back to four-wheelers, and it's been great, so got to make sure that outlet or that opportunity to get to that level and have those experiences is there at a ground level locally.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, a lot of that now is attributed to you. So on behalf of, the district, thank you for everything that you've done for ATV motocross here in Minnesota. But like you said, I'm going to say it for you. You are probably an inspiration to a lot of these kids that, you can live the dream, you can make it big. And like you said, it's really important to keep that alive.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, but I would do this over and over again, just to have that outlet there for other kids. Like there's two really good guys here locally, Neil Larson and David Gay, who usually they're probably my biggest competition, but man, I respect the crap out of those guys. Super talented. In fact, David's on his way home, and Neil is on his way home right now from Ironman, where there was a national this weekend. But like those are two examples of like people who I truly believe can make it. Like they can get to the next level, but they got to keep pushing, So hats off to those guys too.
Yeah, that's awesome to have not, motocrossers of all varieties going out and making it in the bigger scene from District 23. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, Minnesota is kind of known for, making some of the fastest, most talented riders on motocross, between, Dungeys and Martins and, like Daryl Rath from Minnesota on the ATV side, myself, David, Neil. I mean, For being in a frozen tundra 6 months out of the year, like we sure seem to be able to lay it down come spring.
Why do you think that is?
Honestly, I think it's because we're limited in the amount of time that we're able to ride, we make it count.
Mm-hmm.
And so as soon as it's warm enough out, like you're out there during the week putting in the time, like you got to be out there all the time, grinding, practicing, and then entering yourself into as many events as you possibly can, just to keep your skill set sharp and learn new things. But I mean, I think that also another reason is because the district is much healthier than other surrounding districts. Like we definitely bring the competition, and even when our Minnesota guys go out to a national, most of the time in most classes, like we clean up pretty good, against people who come out of Florida or the East Coast or whatever. Like we're putting a pretty good hurting on. I think it's because like here at home, like nobody's really a slouch. Like we've had a lot of guys come from Illinois, Iowa, even Michigan to some district ATV events, and they're like, "Oh my God, I just got worked," and it's like, "Yep," you know. So having that amount of talent here locally, only the best are going to rise to the top. The rest are going to get tired of getting their butt kicked and they're going to quit.
Yeah. Yeah. So at some point here, you've been doing all this racing, going to all these countries, doing all these super cool things through ATV, motocross, TT, off-road racing. At some point, that has to come to a conclusion. How did it end for you?
Um, like I said, so like after the international stuff and after the factory stuff, like I said, I just wanted to go back to having fun, like why I fell in love with the sport in the first place. Plus, honestly, like I was just so tired of traveling. Like
Mm-hmm.
it sounds great, and it is, but when you're doing it for, like the national series for like 6, 7 years, whatever it was, it's like I don't want to drive to Georgia this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I just got back from Florida, or whatever. I was just ready to like have fun. I hadn't been to districts in like 7 years, you know. I didn't know any of the people really anymore because like that whole like call it generation that I was racing with, like they quit, like they just whatever, And so I decided to, well, I still want to race, but I want to have fun and I want to be home like on Sunday night. And so I started racing districts again and was like, oh, this is good. I'm still, racing and meeting new people and stuff like that. And I just decided to do that for, you know, however long it was. I mean, and like I retired, quote unquote, retired in 2020 after winning the Open A championship. And I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'm out. I'm, you know, but I don't know. I don't know how long that'll last. I mean, I have a lot of fun with it. Granted, my kids are into it now. And like, that was almost one of the things where it's like, my kids are so heavily involved in it now that, like I said before, like I'm competitive. I want them to win now.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I want it to be fun for them. I don't want it to be a job or, have them hanging their head low because like, oh, dad's going to yell at me. Cause I don't believe that that's ever the right approach to, having a kid like really want to do something, but that obviously, and they're in two different classes. So for me to focus on them, developing their skills, and getting them to where they want to be and where I want them to be, that takes a lot of focus. And if for me to be out there racing too, well, I want to race at the top level. Okay. And I want to win. So, am I setting myself up for failure if, what are my real expectations? And, I still got to tend to them and take care of them, and, make sure that they don't get the short end of the stick either, and for, for, I think for what is required to win now, even at a local level, in open A, it is a lot of dedication. I mean, I think to be frank, it's a younger man's sport at this point. I'm 40. Some of these guys that are really good, like Neil and David, they're in their mid 20s, no kids. They can train every day, and that's good. I hope that they do. Like they're at their prime, go for it. But for me to say, okay, I'm gonna go beat them again, like maybe, but it's kind of a tall order. But so I'm having a lot of fun right now, with my kids. I took them out riding today. They're getting better. They're getting better every time they ride, and they're having a blast. They're meeting other kids that love this. I've been getting a bunch of families involved into this sport. And one of the best things that I think that, or one of the best ways that I think that I can serve these families is by helping them, like with the right setup. So I'm really good with geometry and chassis setup and weight transfer, suspension settings, like I'm really good at that stuff. So I can help them with that. One of the worst things that I see new families do is they buy an ATV and then they buy the cheapest aftermarket crap that they can put on there. And just because it's not OEM, they think it's better. And it's like, well, no, and like everything's got to work together. So then I often see them throw good money after bad. And that's the quickest way out of the sport, because you're never going to be satisfied with how it is working for you, and you're going to be broke. So like if I can help these people at a ground level and be like, I would buy this vehicle, and then what you should do is A, B, and C, they'll be much happier. And like I think that's probably the best way to go about it. So that's how I'm really heavily involved now, is just helping people, and whether it be critiquing their riding skills or chassis setup or suspension or whatever. Like I'm at like every race.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. And speaking of giving back and helping people, like we've mentioned a few times here, you're the Quad MX rep for D23 ARMCA. How did you decide to get involved with the district on board?
So the however many years ago it was now, like the ATV scene just wasn't healthy, as far as like districts was concerned. Like there's some days where like they're getting like 35, 40 entries. Like that's not sustainable. That's not a good way to, put on an event. It's kind of like I said before, like the competition in Minnesota is fierce, it's thick, well, not when there's 35 to 40 guys. I mean, yeah, sure, the hardcore guys are gonna always stick around, but they don't have anybody pushing them either, And so Wisconsin used to have a great ATV series, and like I'd drive over to Wisconsin just to race some of those guys, because like I heard there are some big bad dudes over there, and it's like, guess what? I'm coming to your home and I'm gonna, beat you. And so they had a great series, and then it just wasn't maintained. I don't know what happened or why, but it just like folded up and disappeared. And to this day, there's no quad racing in Wisconsin, and there's really not much in Illinois. There's not much in Iowa. And it's like right across our border, and that's why we get people from Michigan, from Wisconsin, from Iowa coming to District 23, because not only, did they not have to drive to a national, they can go to a district race that's 5, 6, 7 hours away and get their butt kicked there, rather than have to go and go to a national. But the direction that I saw it heading in was Wisconsin's, and once that happens, you're probably never going to get it back, And so I wanted to step up and at least like throw my hat in the ring. I knew the promoters because obviously I've been around him for 20 plus years. I knew enough people in the industry that, like, hey, could you help us out with, end of year banquet awards, whatever, and I could help people, like get into the sport and kind of tell them my story of like, well, this is how it went for me. How old is your kid? I knew the rules, like I knew what class to put all their kids in. And so it was easy, And so I just volunteered. I knew that there was a guy on his way out. There's another gentleman that was going to assume his role. And so I approached him and just said, hey, with all due respect, would you mind if kindly bow out and let me handle this? He's like, okay, and that's kind of how that went,
Mm-hmm. At the time, was that a difficult conversation to say, hey, like, can you step aside? I really want to do this. Like, was he understanding of your position?
It was, it wasn't the friendliest, I guess, of transitions,
Mm-hmm.
but, and I understand his position. I really do. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
But I just knew way more about it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a different way about like how to go about things. And our personalities are two completely different things. I just thought that it was better suited, for the particular role. And I could be wrong too. I mean, who knows? Maybe he, would have done a fantastic job. Like I said, he's a nice guy. But I wanted to do it. It wasn't like somebody said, hey, you know what you'd be good at?
Yeah.
You should do this. Like it was truly within me where like I want to do this and I want a way to give back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. And I think passion is really, what propels people forward. And look at it now. The ATV Motocross series is its own series. It's not combined with, the dirt bike motocross series anymore. That's something that's, stood out to me. And you're very involved with snowcross. And, in my experiences racing snow bikes in snowcross, there was a couple years ago, we took a bus to the Snowmobile Hall of Fame when we were in Eagle River, Wisconsin. And someone sitting behind me on the bus was like, yeah, District 23 has their own series and it's awesome. And so I think, that's a testament to your hard work over the years.
Oh, thank you.
Is the, individual races, is that something that you guys really pushed for, that you were very passionate about creating for the ATV motocross series?
Nope.
No?
I never mind. I never did mind like riding with bikes. Like I said, like I grew up riding with bikes. I used to ride bikes myself. Like I never looked at it through the lens of the quote unquote dirt biker, like they have a different look on things and it's unique. So we used to race together. And I think that part of the driving force was that like the days got really long.
Yeah.
Like when you have, I don't know how many entries we had, at the time that we split. But I know that when we did split, it was like we were getting 120 whatever entries for four-wheelers. Mm-hmm. How many were we getting for dirt bikes back then? I don't really know, maybe 300, 400, whatever the number is, right? Like the days got long. So I think that was definitely one of the factors that came into play. Mm-hmm. But I think that the other major factor that came into play was bike guys complaining about four-wheelers. And I don't know if it was them complaining about us because either, like I said, their day got longer, which, okay, fine, fair enough. I get that. Like we're all here, mm-hmm. Or if it was more of you guys are boring to watch, or maybe you guys wreck our ruts or this or that or whatever, like or it could have been just a combination of all of it, and personally, and I could be wrong, I feel like a lot of the bike people kind of banded together and said, okay, well, on this Sunday, we can either race at, say, Mora or, Millville, pick a track, whatever, right? You got that north-south split. And if you have quads there, we're going to the other one. Well, the promoter doesn't want to hear that because they're like, well, that's, a lot of income.
Right.
But there's power in numbers, and so if that's what they want, that's what they're going to get, and so these promoters are kind of forced with like, okay, well, now what, and I understand their position 100% too. It's a business. They have to make money. And I respect that, and I respect the promoters. I do want to take a second and thank the families and the promoters that have stuck by us for all these years. You guys know who you are. Thank you. Without them, we'd be no better than Wisconsin, bad. So thank you. Big thank you to you guys. But yeah, so I mean, that on our own days, I think that was probably really just a combination of it. Like we were getting 120 entries just on the ATV side. The bikes were probably complaining or whatever. I think a lot of the animosity, like from dirt bikes to ATVs, isn't so much driven from what that person truly believes as much as it is, well, that's like, you hear it all the time. And so that's what you begin to believe. Right. So like going back, like when I used to race with dirt bikes on the same day, it was never a problem. I never heard anything about it until the age of social media.
Right.
And like that brought a tidal wave of hate on ATVs. And it's easy to click a button and punch some keys, right? And make a joke of this or that or whatever. And it's like, I don't think that you can really make fun of something unless, like, have you tried it? It's not as easy as you think. Like I've done both, like I said, and the snowmobiles. Like I've ridden, raced pretty much everything. It's not as, like, if a lot of these people would try it, they'd be like, oh God, this isn't nearly as easy as I thought it was going to be. It's difficult, but yeah, like I said, I mean, like, I really think that social media brought on a whole new, like, generation of haters.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. I mean, like, it is really sad.
Yeah.
And most of these people will never take the time to even look up just a video on YouTube of some of these top athletes on an ATV. Because, like, if they did, they would probably go, oh, I might want to walk back that statement,
Right. Instead of you guys becoming the face of all these memes and, it's unfairly, made fun of. And the controversy at the races, I'm sure, there are pros and cons of having the bikes at the ATV events, right? Looking at it from the other perspective, it's, it's all what you want to make it, right? If it's going to be a great time, it's going to be a great time because you believe it, and no matter who is there, it's going to be a great weekend of racing. So, yeah, like you said, I think it's just a time to educate yourself and be aware that these athletes are athletes and they are just as skilled in a different discipline of racing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I said, I just don't understand it. I can't wrap my head around that because, like, all I see on the other end of it is somebody just like me behind a set of handlebars on a Sunday who looks at a track and is like, I want to absolutely tear that thing up. Let me at it. And we all love the same thing. So I don't understand, where where it stems from or comes from or whatever. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's nothing new. I mean, trust me, I've heard it all.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I don't think it's anything that's going away. You got to sometimes have some thick skin, but the best way to, you know, kind of show it is on the track, you know, like earn your, it's sad that we almost have to like earn the respect rather than just naturally like, oh, you're a human, I respect you,
Yeah.
you know, until you prove otherwise. But it is what it is, you know.
Yeah. Well, trust me, I've felt those feelings too, proving myself and proving I belong to be somewhere. Um, it is a bummer, but it definitely makes you a stronger person, a more determined person, and I think that just makes you better in the end.
Oh, for sure, 100%.
So, talking about the split of the series from ATV Motocross having its own series now, how do you think the series has fared, after that split?
I think we've done really well. Especially, you know, not tooting my own horn here or anything, but like after I took over the role, we definitely grew numbers. When it was a little bit smaller than what it is now, I mean, I really try to make this a really family friendly environment where you want to bring your neighbors and your aunts, uncles, whatever it is, right? Because the more people we can get there, number one, the more money the promoters make. Number two, the more they can sell some of their swag. Number three, maybe there will be another kid there, a neighbor kid that's like, oh God, Timmy's 4-wheeler race was really cool. Like, Dad, get me one, you know?
Yeah.
So we can grow it that way. But then I also want to make sure that people know that I'm very approachable, you know. Um, not so much on Sundays if I'm racing, I've been told.
I think that's for a lot of racers, so no
Yeah.
worries there.
But you know, so we would do potlucks or we would do beanbag tournaments or we do this or that or whatever. And now we're kind of like at a point of like enough entries where it's like I can't do that stuff necessarily just because somebody will be like, well, I didn't hear about this, or I didn't know where it was, or and then they feel uninvited, you
Right.
know, which is never the case. Like my door is always open to all of these people who ever need help, you know, or they have a question or whatever. I'll always help them. Um, and we might get back to some of that stuff, but like, you know, you see like a certain like number of people like assembling tables and food and crock pots and stuff like this. And then, you know, you might be wondering like, oh, they don't like me. Like I didn't get invited or whatever. And just the sheer logistics of doing something like that for like, call it, you know, riders bring a lot of ATV guys like they bring the family. Holy cow. Like it's not like Johnny throwing his dirt bike in the back of the truck for a Sunday ride. Like campers are rolling in and like the whole fam's here and you know, whatever. It's a big thing, you know. So like just logistically speaking, like if we were to facilitate like, you know, a 300 person um cookout or whatever, it's like, well, we got 45 pans of beans and no buns.
Yeah.
So,
Worse
you
than
know,
planning a wedding, I guess, right?
well, yeah. I mean, that's almost what it's like.
Yeah.
And so I've seen it go into like just smaller groups, like, you know, families of like 4 or 5 different families. Like they'll do their own thing on their own day or whatever, which is great. And I encourage that. But I try to get out as much as possible and especially to the new faces and just ask them like, how's it going? How was your day? Do you need help? I watched him a little bit and they seem like they're struggling with A, B, and C. Would you mind if I tried to help you?
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, sorry, I get long-winded. I don't know what the question even was anymore.
How's the
Oh,
series doing? So, right, we've had these logistical challenges of extracurricular activities, but the racing itself, how has that been going?
I think it's going really well.
Awesome.
Last year we had an absolute banger of a schedule last season. Um, just phenomenal. Great. I mean, Cambridge, Brookston, um, Mankato. It was a prime schedule. This year's a little bit different. We've gone to doubleheader events, so which is something that we've done in the past, like at Little Falls with Dale and Sharon. Um, it seemed to work out pretty well with them, and we did it again last year up at Brookston, and so again it worked out, and somehow it got adapted to every other track, which some people like it. Some people are going to love it and some people are not going to like it at all. And I get it. But, like you look at diesel prices or fuel prices right now, it's probably a good thing that we, wrap up, 2 weekends of racing in one weekend, Plus, we live in Minnesota, short summers. You got weddings, you got, graduations, whatever. Everybody packs everything into our 3-month window here in Minnesota. So, instead of having to travel twice the amount, we're traveling half the amount. Well, now you get some more of your summer back. There's pros and cons to it. Like I said, some people are going to love it and some people not so much. But let's try it and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, anything you do, right? Half the people are going to love it, half aren't. And, the people that are truly dedicated to ATV racing in Minnesota will stick around and they'll enjoy it and they'll be with you for the ebbs and flows. So
yeah,
it'll be exciting to see where it goes.
That's one thing I've learned in this role is that you can never make all of the people happy all of the time.
Yep.
So it's like, you're either going to be loved or hated, and that could change from weekend to weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So Cody, in conclusion, first of all, thank you for everything that you do. But for people that may look up to you or want to approach you at the track, what are some words of advice that you have for them?
I mean, never get discouraged. And if you need help, ask for it. And if you have, one of those days where you just kind of hang your head low or you got work pretty good, by your competition, just don't give up. Honestly, like you own where you made mistakes. Don't blame it on somebody else. Own your mistakes because that's the only way that you can get better. Absolutely acknowledge and take responsibility for your weaknesses and improve on it. And that will make you that much better the next time. Keep going at it, keep working at it, believe in yourself. You can do it.
Awesome. Great words of advice. Cody, thank you. We will see you soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you everybody else for joining us. We will see you in 2 Mondays for another episode of The Roots. And hey, before we go, a quick thank you to Fly Racing, Spring Creek MX Park, Burn Benders Raceway, and the Shed Shop for their support of District 23 ARMCA and this podcast. We'll see you in a couple Mondays. Thanks for joining us. Catch us every other Monday wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on our YouTube page.